There are three main arguments for what to do with JJ McCarthy next season, and I'm about to argue for all three of them. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Today on the show, there is the central debate of the offseason is going to be about JJ McCarthy. It's the thing that we are going to talk about so much that we're deeply sick of talking about it. So I want to set the stage by dividing most of the ideas that we can have about JJ McCarthy into three different categories. I think by these three categories, I'm probably going to encompass your opinion in one of them. There is the argument that the Vikings should completely go, just be gung-ho. He did pretty well at the end of the season. Let's see where that goes. Develop him. Don't get distracted. Stay on this course. There is the opposite of that, where you say, nope, dude was super crappy. He was bad. Don't waste any more years of Justin Jefferson's prime. Cut bait, move on, do something else. And then there's something in the middle. Give him competition. Give him the chance to keep the job, but with some kind of backup plan, something a little more nuanced, but could be read as a half measure. I am going to present the arguments best I can for all three of those, even though I don't agree with all three of those. I'm going to do my best and try to just sort of lay out the groundwork for the basic arguments without getting wrapped up in which name is which. That's what I'm not going to do today, is say, and that's why the Vikings should sign Aaron Rodgers or should trade for Kyler Murray or should whatever, right? Let's not get bogged down in the names, because that introduces your opinion of Aaron Rodgers or Kyler Murray. I know Aaron Rodgers is going to retire, but see, that's a complication I don't want to get into. So let's start with the positive argument. JJ McCarthy is still the future of the Vikings, and the Vikings should just roll with it. Get a more serious backup this time for sure, in case he gets hurt again. But other than that, you're basically just trying to do what the Vikings thought they were doing with Sam Howell. And really, the argument probably starts with that idea, is they are adding somebody to the room. So whoever that backup is, the Vikings thought Sam Howell would be the kind of guy that could hop in and play 5 games and go 2-3 and you're going to be fine with it. But he didn't turn out to be that guy. So you just take another crack at that and see if you can get it right this time. And as for JJ McCarthy, the question of, why throw your whole lot behind him is an easy one to answer. If you look at the way the locker room treats JJ McCarthy, the way that the coaches and the players rally around McCarthy when he is there, this is not a situation where the locker room feels the same as you may feel when you watch him throw an interception. And you go, oh my God, this guy's letting us all down. Don't project that on the players. That's not the way they feel. By every report and every account we have, there maybe is some idea that, there's some seller's remorse with Sam Darnold watching him go be the 1 seed. How couldn't there be? But there isn't a resentment toward JJ McCarthy based on anyone's reporting. If there is, then it's a secret to all of us, but it really doesn't seem like there is. So that's a huge part of it, is how poorly the season went doesn't seem to be weighing on the team in the way it's not the case that if you get rid of, or that if you keep JJ McCarthy around and keep him the quarterback, you're going to lose the locker room. And part of that is because he played way better down the stretch. And in fact, I think it was Kwesi or O'Connell, one of the two, in their press conferences this week, divided it into the first 6 games and the last 4 games. Let's do that. Let's really quickly do a statistical analysis where we check in on the first 6 games of JJ McCarthy and the last 4 games of JJ McCarthy. So we can just split the season down the road right there at week 13. In the first 13 weeks of the season, JJ McCarthy was far and away the least efficient quarterback in the league. He had yards per attempt of 5.8. He had a completion percentage of 54.1, an EPA per dropback of minus 0.34. It's catastrophically bad. The difference between JJ McCarthy and the next guy is the same as the difference between the next guy, who is Dylan Gabriel, and 6th place. And the difference between 6th place You got to go all the way to 25th place to cover the same amount of ground statistically. It's very, very, very bad. But if you then take the last 5 weeks, JJ McCarthy is a top 5 quarterback by all of those same metrics. He had a yards per attempt of 8.4. A completion percentage, he's not top 5 in completion percentage, it's 64.3, but by EPA per dropback, he's sandwiched right between Brock Purdy, Bo Nix, Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford. All these guys are in the playoffs. That was playoff caliber football in those last 5 weeks of the season. And really it was 3 games. It was 6 halves worth. But that is what we are living on right now. And that sentiment has a little bit of merit, right? He started off rough because he's a 22-year-old player in a crazy complex offense with a lot of complex physical and temporal things that he has to deal with that are more than just memorizing stuff on a whiteboard. I'm sure he did plenty of that in his rookie year. But to execute it is difficult. It takes time to learn how to do those things. It takes experience to know how to handle certain situations, because when you're in a situation for the first time, you might not get the answer right all the time. But we're starting to see that little mark of progress. Yes, it is a small sample that JJ McCarthy was a top 5 quarterback in the last 5 games of the season, but that doesn't make it untrue. And for all I heard about McCarthy in September, everybody was ready to call him the next Johnny Manziel after 2 games. So I get to do it after 4, the other way around when it is true. Further than all of that, the Vikings threw their lot in with JJ McCarthy already. They're pot committed. This is not a sunk cost fallacy thing. I've said it a lot, and I truly believe this outside of this little rhetorical exercise. The best outcome for the Vikings is the one where JJ McCarthy works out. There is no better outcome than the one where JJ McCarthy works out. And if you don't think JJ McCarthy can work out, that's a different thing. But there is no world where a good JJ McCarthy is not preferable to like bringing in some random free agent. No. Commit to this player you drafted 10th overall. And it's not just the draft capital. They've committed so many resources, so many capitals into JJ McCarthy. They've declined other ideas. They only gave Sam Darnold a 1-year offer and functionally let him walk. They weren't willing to match a long-term deal. They weren't willing to match the deal with Daniel Jones. They let him walk out the building. They have declined quite a few exit ramps. Now it's not convenient. It was convenient too back then. Now it's not. Now it's a much worse time to do it. You're in this, baby. Commit and go be in this. From a more serious angle, I do still believe in JJ McCarthy. There is so much that is bad that happened, right? So many things he struggled with. But there is something that I personally just cannot ever believe. And it's that whatever you did last time is what you're going to do next time. We have seen it way too much in the NFL that is simply not true. If you went into a game and you made this mistake, that does not guarantee that you will make this mistake again. Especially for a young player, guy in year 10, yeah, I kind of know what to expect from you. We've seen enough of a pattern and we know you. But a guy in functionally year 1, his first 10 games that made a bunch of mistakes early on, but then learned how to figure out the mistakes. There is a trajectory there that you simply have to go after. And you can't waste a bunch of training camp reps on some has-been veteran that will never take you to the Super Bowl. The only iteration of these Vikings that goes to the Super Bowl before everyone gets fired and everyone on this roster is traded away, which doesn't take long to happen. But there is not a single player from the 2017 Vikings, by the way. Happy anniversary to the Minneapolis Miracle yesterday. Nobody on that team is still on the team. Not a single person after Harrison Smith and CJ Ham are gone. Assuming Harrison Smith actually retires. It changes fast, and the only way that the iteration of the Vikings that we see right now gets to the actual Super Bowl is with JJ McCarthy. Reclamation projects ain't going to do it. They're not going to do this if they just go get the next Jim McMahon and have a weird year where they sneak into the playoffs. They're not going to do this by Steelersing their way into a Russell Wilson season or an Aaron Rodgers season. It's this. It has to be this. So put your whole lot behind it and go for Super Bowl or broke. Because if you ain't first, you're last. That's probably an extreme argument, but there's another extreme argument the other way around. I'll get to that one next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Quo. New year, new systems. It's time to look at the way we run our businesses and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. And that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O. And it's a smarter way to run your business communications. Communication is everything. So if you can put everything in one place so everybody has access to all of the information in one streamlined way, you can cut out quite a bit of unnecessary time and also get everybody on the same page and limit those miscommunications that can be so brutal. Everybody sees the full conversation threads, makes replies super faster and more personal. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number. So nothing gets missed. It's no surprise. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off of your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnfl. That's QUO.com/lockedonnfl. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode is also brought to you by Ultimate QB. I have become obsessed with this game. I tried it because, you got to see what you're looking at. And it is stupid fun. You get to be a quarterback. You get to be drafted #1 overall to your team, sign contracts, trade and upgrade yourself, build chemistry and evolve your teammates. And there's this whole scaling, skill tree kind of system. But then you get to play the games with the dots, basically. It's like playing Madden with the dots on your phone. It's so much fun. It's so easy to just kind of get lost in it. And when you get one crazy overtime victory, you just want to cycle right into the next one, run it back. Just trust me. Head over to ultimate-qb.com. That's ultimate-qb.com, or search for Ultimate QB in the App Store. And something special just for you, use the promo code LOCKEDON in the game's store to get a free boost at the start of your career. That's code LOCKEDON, all caps. Ultimate QB football legend. QB1, it's your legacy. Moving on, it's time for the Doomer Luke part of today's episode of Locked On Vikings. It's funny, the last time I did this exercise where I was like, here's the positive and here's the negative, it was about what was going to happen this season. And it was like, here's the optimist and the pessimist view. And a clip from the pessimist view went giga viral and everyone's been mad at me for it for months. So let's do it again. Run her back, baby. Here is why the Vikings should absolutely move on from JJ McCarthy. Because dude sucks. You want to split the season in a way that makes him look exactly as good as he has to be? How about just the entire season? By all those stats we looked at, EPA per dropback, JJ McCarthy was 32 out of 33 qualifying quarterbacks, better than only Cam Ward. That dude was worse than Joe Flacco, Spencer Rattler, Tua Tagovailoa, guys that lost their jobs this year. Jacoby Brissett, rookie Jackson Dart, Geno Smith. We were worse than the Geno Smith offense with JJ McCarthy at the helm. He was soundly outplayed by a dying Carson Wentz. And we want to run this thing back again? Justin Jefferson ain't getting any younger. Christian Darrisaw ain't getting any younger. These guys aren't getting any cheaper. Players are going to leave. And replacing them is not going to be easy, considering that the GM can't draft and the Vikings have a bunch of cap issues this year. So you got to strike while the iron is hot. This is a team that has to be serious right now. This is not a team that can do what the Raiders are doing all the time and just say, hey, we're just going to rebuild all the time. No, this was a completely unacceptable result offensively. And yeah, they did end up with a winning record, but that wasn't because of the offense. Defense carried the offense kicking and screaming over the finish line in some of those games. And it all starts with the quarterback. You want to develop this quarterback? Let's list out the things you got to develop. 1, he has to fix his mechanics entirely from the ground up. His footwork in the pocket is broken. His throwing motion is broken at the hips and at the shoulders. And his hand is literally broken because the dude can't stay healthy. That is another thing you have to teach him, is to learn how to protect himself. He has to learn emotionally how not to fall apart while he's trying not to physically fall apart. You have to rebuild this dude from the ground up. There is no way that a different package, even a reclamation project, hasn't made more progress here. But if I have to teach you new footwork, a new throwing motion, I have to make you faster at the reads, I have to teach you how to protect yourself, I have to teach you how to keep your cool in the middle of the game, that list is so long. You can't teach all of those things overnight. You can't teach all of those things in one off season or 1 season or 2 off seasons or 2 seasons. If you want to try to develop JJ McCarthy, by the time that dude is a halfway decent quarterback based on the baseline that we have seen so far, the trajectory that he is on does not have him being anything remotely serious till like year 7. I mean, let's just be perfectly honest about that. So are we willing to sit around and wait for this dude to maybe become somewhat of a quarterback? And by then he's like making quarterback money. And so it's expensive. And now you have the most expensive mid quarterback in the league. And that's like best case scenario. If you think anything else like that is happening, you're dreaming. Guys move on from young quarterbacks all the time. Did the Titans just stick by Will Levis? Obviously, the Cardinals didn't stick by Josh Rosen. That's the famous one. But there's plenty of examples of these young quarterbacks, these Deshaun Kaisers, totally flaming out. And by the way, every quarterback I just mentioned was better in his rookie year than JJ McCarthy. He's behind the Deshaun Kaiser pace. So unless we are just banking our whole world here on the most unprecedented turnaround, outlier, miracle in history, we just have to eat our losses and move on so that the Vikings can actually have a season that means literally anything before all of our good players are old, washed, or not in purple anymore. That has to be the case. I think it's the only way that Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi keep their jobs. If they want to go down this developmental path and we see tiny little baby steps of incremental progress so that he can maybe be the 28th best quarterback next year instead of the 32nd best quarterback next year. If you want to do that, the patience of the NFL is not going to keep those guys around. They simply won't last that long. It's as if the world is asking us if we can all just close our eyes and stop watching football for 5 years, and then maybe when we come back, we might have a quarterback that's like good, not great. He is not cut out for this league. You've seen not cut out for this league. And so it's time to move on. Plus, there are better options out there. I mean, shoot, bring in Malik Willis. If he's going to be a free agent, right? Or, yeah, man, Tua Tagovailoa, better quarterback than JJ McCarthy. And there's not really a way to argue otherwise unless you just want to be a homer and say, but I don't want it to be that way. Tua Tagovailoa, better quarterback than JJ McCarthy. Malik Willis, even in his Titans years, better quarterback than JJ McCarthy. There's so many other ones. I mean, bring in the ghost of Geno Smith if you want. Bring in the ghost of Russell Wilson if you want. Maybe the Aaron Rodgers reunion we all have been begging for will finally happen. All of that stuff, I mean, that stuff's better than Carson Wentz, right? We all think Kyler Murray's better than Carson Wentz, right? So if he's better than Carson Wentz, he's better than JJ McCarthy because Carson Wentz was better than JJ McCarthy. But it's not going to happen because this franchise is too emotionally wrapped up in not hurting anybody's fee-fees to move on from a quarterback that was clearly a disaster. So let's get out of the disaster. The off-ramp is not hard. Just don't start him anymore. You can do what the New York Jets did with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, he got hurt and it didn't work out for them because they're the New York Jets. But Zach Wilson didn't stop them from trying that, and Zach Wilson should not have stopped them from trying that. And right now, we've got our own Zach Wilson situation. Will Levis didn't stop the Titans from drafting Cam Ward. Josh Rosen didn't stop the Cardinals from drafting Kyler Murray. You got to just do it. Hell, Kirk Cousins didn't stop the Falcons from drafting Michael Penix in the same offseason. You got to just lean in and do it and say, you know what? We're not going to commit any more resources to this project that is on a trajectory that needs a miracle to just be average. So cut bait, cut your resources, cut your losses, move on before everybody gets fired over this quagmire. Because it doesn't need to be a quagmire. The only attachment you have to JJ McCarthy is emotional. Otherwise, it's just a failed first-round pick. And there's a lot of failed first-round picks out there. A lot of them on the Vikings. It's just another one. You can recover from that. But you can't recover from that if you immediately donate Justin Jefferson's entire late 20s to a dude that can't throw the freaking football without sailing it 10 miles over the guy's head and directly into a safety's arms. Can't do it. Okay, well, so that was a bit caricature-y, and you can probably tell that I don't really take that one too seriously. I think that opinion is way too much. So let me try to wrap this up with something a little bit more nuanced, that is a little bit chiller, and still addresses the issues that I just brought up, but maybe in not so extreme a way. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Home Chef. It's a new year, and we are all trying to be a little better, and maybe one of those things is trying to cook more at home, but that can be very inconvenient. It can be difficult to work it into your daily routine and really get it to be as normal of a part of your life as you want. That is where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. These recipes are simple, but they feel elevated, even restaurant quality, with dishes co-created by chefs like Gordon Ramsay. There are over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. So you can save time and money. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off of your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off of your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. This episode is also brought to you by Indeed. Have you ever made a hire that looked great on paper but then didn't work out? You know how important it is to get that decision right the first time. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. Sponsored jobs boost your post to the people who are the best match for your role, and that makes a real difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Do it the right way with Indeed. Caricature over. Let's move on here with something a little bit more nuanced on Locked On Vikings. We like to do that on Locked On Vikings. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. My everydayers that love the nuance, and hopefully you guys like the approach that I try to take to this. And if you are an everydayer and you want to go ad-free, consider it the Locked On Everydayer Club. You can go to lockedonvikings.supercast.com and get ad-free episodes of Locked On Vikings, plus access to a special Discord server and more, all for $5 a month or $50 a year if you would rather. Once again, that is lockedonvikings.supercast.com to join the Everydayer Club. Okay, so now that we've gotten the two caricatures out of the way, right? The extraordinarily defensive JJ McCarthy superfan and the extraordinarily aggressive, we got to get rid of him. He's worth nothing. I've already closed the book on it. We can maybe be a little bit more nuanced about this. Here's what I really think the Vikings should do. I lean much more toward the first guy than the second guy, personally, in my own opinion. You have to acknowledge how poorly JJ McCarthy played, but there just isn't a world where you don't see this out. And you haven't seen it out yet. There is every probability in the world, and I would say it is more probable than not, that JJ McCarthy is not going to make it as a quarterback, just based on his first year, based on all the statistical trends we can know, history, and those comparisons tell us that it is certainly not better than a coin flip that this is going to work out, right? But you're not trying to make the decision on whether or not it's better than a coin flip. That's not why you make that decision. You are aiming for a ceiling. And that's really the decision the Vikings made back in 2024 offseason when they decided not to keep Kirk Cousins around and go for a young quarterback with a veteran of some kind to compete with him. And that guy was Sam Darnold, which turned out way different than anybody could have imagined. But that's the point. The point was that we are going to expose ourselves to the floor dropping out from under us so that we can chase an actual Super Bowl, right? So we can try to actually get that ceiling. And I really do think of all the QB options out there for the Vikings, from stick with JJ and develop him to trade for some has-been, to bring in some veteran has-been to compete, to like all of the different options. The only one that I really see the Vikings becoming a Super Bowl team in this iteration, before everybody on this roster has moved on and all the coaches and front office are fired, which will all happen someday. And before that day, the only way I see a Super Bowl happening is with JJ McCarthy. It is just so unreasonable to me to think that they're going to like trade for Tua and Tua's going to lead them to the promised land. Like that deal doesn't work that doesn't pass the smell test for me. But the 22-year-old that showed a little promise at the end, taking a second-year leap, and suddenly, they're a much more real contender, and now we see where the chips fall, that feels way more reasonable to me. And you have to chase that outcome, even if it's not the most probable one. You can bring in Kyler Murray and be really sure about what you're going to get. You can bring in Jimmy Garoppolo and be really sure about what you're going to get, or any one of these other names. But are you happy with it, or are you just sure about what it is? With McCarthy, you're not that sure about what it is, and there's a minefield of bad outcomes that could get everybody fired. But I'll tell you right now, going 7-10 a bunch with some random washed up has-been starter is also going to get everybody fired. If you're not familiar with the poker term play to your outs, I think that's very apt here. If you have a bad hand, you have to go through all the different possibilities and you have to say, look, I only win this hand if my opponent has that hand. So I am going to play the best move for if my opponent has that hand. And if I end up doing something nonsensical because they had a hand that was beating me anyways, well, I wasn't going to win the hand. That is a key concept for like all pro poker players. And I think in this case, the Vikings have to do the same. They have to play to their outs. And their out is JJ McCarthy works out. So that is going to look a lot like doubling down. And after listening to the press conferences with O'Connell and Kwesi, the overall vibe that I got was a double down. It really felt like, they are going to bring in a quarterback that's been reported, but it's also common sense. They're going to bring in somebody could be in a reunion with Carson Wentz and a real contract with him. I don't know, maybe. I kind of doubt it, but I mean, could be a bunch of things, and that's one of them. But somebody else has to enter the room. They only have 2 guys under contract right now. And it's just a matter of how serious that acquisition is. Is it Carson Wentz? Is it another Sam Howell? Is it a Malik Willis? Or is it somebody that has starting experience that can really push JJ McCarthy and make it a competition? And that's really the in-between answer, is make JJ McCarthy compete. But a competition doesn't come without costs. It costs reps to have a competition, right? You have to take away reps that McCarthy has getting this ever important and ever presently bad chemistry with Justin Jefferson figured out. And the chemistry with Addison and Naylor and everybody on the roster, right? And then you have some other jabroni coming in there and taking up a bunch of that time. It also could cost McCarthy time. If he does by chance, like let's say they bring in Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz is still a better quarterback than JJ McCarthy because the Carson Wentz offense was more productive than the McCarthy offense, which I don't super believe that means that Wentz was a better quarterback. I think they came up with something that hid the quarterback that worked a little bit better than the thing that let the quarterback sink or swim and he sank. That doesn't necessarily mean that if you gave them more similar approaches that the results would have been what they were, but let's say that I'm wrong about that Carson Wentz and JJ McCarthy come into camp and Wentz outplays McCarthy. Well, now you're not developing him at all. At that point, if he loses the competition, you're moving on. It's over. In the same way Anthony Richardson is over with the Colts, right? He lost the competition to Daniel Jones, and that's it. And even with Daniel Jones' Achilles, it sounds like from all the noise coming out of Indianapolis that they're still sticking with Daniel Jones and that Anthony Richardson's going to be on the trade block. Another option, by the way. If that's the case, you have to manage the time. So here's what I think the smoothest option is. And there's downsides to this. There's downsides to every plan, but this is the one I dislike the least. Give him the inside track and somebody to beat. Maybe that's Anthony Richardson. Let's go with that name for now because it's a fascinating one. You trade a day 3 pick for Anthony Richardson, call him the Reclamation Project, but you give JJ McCarthy the first team reps. You tell them both, hey, Anthony, if you outplay this dude, we will change that status quo. But that's the status quo going into camp, and you plan nothing from there. You don't have a plan for, and then by week 4, we're going to assess. By the bye week, we're going to, no, none of that. You say, first training camp practice, McCarthy, you are getting all the first team reps. Anthony, you are getting all the second team reps. And then tomorrow we'll see if it's the same way. And after a couple of practices, an answer will begin to clarify itself. And if you want to keep going the way you're going, you have every ability to. And that way, you're protected against a lot of outcomes. If McCarthy is just a disaster trash pile, you're going to figure that out really fast. And you can put in Anthony Richardson, and now he's your reclamation project, and you're going a new way. You're trying something else. You're not just wasting time with this quagmire like the second guy was worried about. The situation where McCarthy gets injured, you're protected against that. You have a backup that's got starting experience. You can bring him in. He's only got to last for a few games and you're good to go, right? Which also in turn kind of protects against Anthony Richardson's injury proneness. Between the two of them, there are 17 games. Maybe they'll trade off injuries or whatever, but between the two of them, there's 17 games at least. If McCarthy plays really well, though, you haven't put yourself in a situation where it's awkward. And that's the real problem that I have with cut bait with McCarthy, let him be the backup and bring in some wily veteran to shepherd you through what will surely be a stormy season. To do the Aaron Rodgers Jets move, you only do that if you're 100% sure that McCarthy is not going to turn it around. And while we can say that McCarthy's turnaround isn't necessarily probable, we would be downright idiots to say that it isn't possible. That old Pirates of the Caribbean line. It's not possible. No, Barbosa, it's not probable. And, you know, I talk a lot about outcomes, and football can be approached as a series of outcomes. I'm thinking a little bit too much like Kwesi maybe here, but he sees things as, you know, everything is a range of outcomes, right? If I do this, if I make this decision, it can work out well, it can work out poorly, it can work out somewhere in the middle. And part of the thought process is thinking down those lines and saying, okay, what happens if this works out bad, right? If I take a risk on an injury-prone player, what happens if that player goes out, right? I'm taking a risk bringing in Ryan Kelly. Who goes in if he goes out? Well, it's Michael Juergens. And they were satisfied with that, and they shouldn't have been. And that's the decision that I critique. That's the thing that I have an issue with. Taking a risk and then having that risk fall apart is something that I encourage. And I can't be a hindsight guy if I'm going to encourage those risks. But what I can be more critical of is how they cover their bases for if those risks don't turn out. That's what we have to do. Take the risk, but buy your insurance. Cover your bases. Have a plan for the outcomes. If McCarthy sucks or if he gets hurt, you need someone to turn to, which is where I came up, why I've said the standard the way that I've said it so far, which is I want a guy that can be the guy, not a guy that is definitely the guy. I mean, look, if you can find a way to get Joe Burrow in this building, I'm all for it, but we live in reality here. Somebody that could be the guy. I don't need it to be guaranteed. I don't even need it to be probable, but somebody that if McCarthy flames out and we got to get out of him, at least we've got the next shot at this already in the building. That's what I want. And that's kind of why the Anthony Richardson thing is easy to me, is interesting to me. I mean, because he's in a terrible spot. He's in a similar spot to McCarthy where it's like the guy that fell in love with him and drafted him is moving on maybe. But with Richardson, because he's so young and there's all this potential and there's all this upside that I'm super just intrigued by. It's like the world where he ends up taking over, you can still see him proving something he hasn't proven yet, being a guy that he hasn't shown on the field yet, because there's just so much development in front of him. Not unlike JJ McCarthy, and you're just kind of doubling up on those ideas and just finding that redundancy and, hey, maybe one of these guys will turn out. Like I'm partial to that. Or if you want to say, hey, you know, Kyler Murray, they just always did it wrong with him, or Tua, they always just did it wrong with him at his old team. Give him to Kevin O'Connell, who knows how it's going to be, and this guy's going to explode. Okay, right? I can get behind that plan. I can't quite get behind let's just bring in Carson Wentz again plan, because Carson Wentz will never be the guy. He'll be the backup, but he'll never be the guy. And it also is why I'm super against let's see if we can coax Aaron Rodgers out of retiring kind of thing, because Rodgers would never be the guy. If he is the guy for 1 year, it's almost certainly just the one, or an equivalent of it. This is why I didn't want to bring him names, because I know that like he's probably retiring. But like if they coax him out for 1 more year, okay, great, but where's the long term for that, right? I want somebody in this building that gives them another long-term option. That's where I think the Vikings need to go with this. I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skol.